Energy vampires. Hello again. Today we're going to take a look at energy vampires and the different forms in which they present themselves. But first of all, please take a second to like and subscribe, or I'll be paying you a little visit tonight. And check out a couple of my books. One of them is How the Dead Connect with Us and Vice Versa. Another is The Difference Between Spirits, Ghosts and Troublesome Entities. They're both available globally through Amazon. And whilst we're on the subject of reading, you might also want to take a look at some of my blog posts. They're all about spirituality, life and love. All the relevant links are below in the description. Okay, energy vampires. I used to think that energy vampires are just people who moan a lot or talk about themselves incessantly, are consistently negative, or even plain boring. However, I've come to realise that energy vampires can be far more insidious than that. But before we get to that, let's be honest, we have all been guilty of being a bit of an energy vampire at some point in our lives, haven't we? I remember talking to a woman many years ago and watched with growing shame as her face started to drain before my very eyes. I could see the impact that I was having upon her. I immediately shut up and consciously lightened the conversation, whilst vowing to be more mindful of my own behaviour in future. It has to be said, though, that most energy vampires have very little self-awareness and are largely living unconscious lives. I believe that one of the main purposes of the experience of life in this physical dimension is to evolve into greater consciousness, and therefore in self-awareness, through an incarnational process. How many incarnations a soul will require is going to be down to themselves. This is what makes life on Earth so tricky. We are all at different stages of consciousness, and some human beings appear to be utterly resistant to the idea of becoming a more conscious, empathic soul, and they are dangerous. So yes, habitual moaners, those with an entrenched victim mentality, the self-absorbed and the plain unaware can drain our mental and emotional energy as if a plug has been pulled. But it is the true stealers of our time, our happiness and our sanity even, who are the creme de la creme of energy vampires. Stick with me until the end of this video because we are going to get to them. Before we do, let's list other ways in which people, including those that we love, can leave us depleted and frustrated. Sometimes without even understanding that that is what has just happened to us. Believing that it must be something to do with ourselves, as in, why am I suddenly feeling so bad? Energy vampires include the following. People who habitually talk too loudly. I have definitely been in the vicinity of this type of EV, for short, and the ultimate effect they have is to cause you to feel as if they are repeatedly banging you over the head with a blunt instrument. We used to have a neighbour who insisted upon conducting her personal business in her kitchen with the back door wide open. Also, if she bought anything new, she loved to phone everyone she could think of in order to let them know exactly how much it cost. And how do I know this? Because we heard every single word. We couldn't get away from the sound of her voice on some days. After she finally moved out, I feared I'd gone deaf for a while. People who talk loudly and persistently talk over you. They might seem harmless, as in not really aware of what they are doing, but having had a number of dealings with one particular woman who does this, I started to suspect that behind the friendly smile she always wears is a darker desire to control situations and other people. The last conversation I had with her ended with me telling her to shut up in no uncertain terms. People who refuse to acknowledge what you are saying as if you haven't even spoken. They continue to push their own point of view, their chosen agenda, regardless of your response or explanation. They won't take no for an answer. And when they finally push you to snappiness, they take offence. I was only trying to help you, or your problem is you won't ever take advice, are just two of the ways in which they respond. You will never win with this kind of EV. People who always have problems, but who are never open to solutions or healing of any kind. And this is because they have come to validate themselves through their victim status. It has now become their identity. People who only ever talk about themselves as if no one else in the world exists. When my children were younger, they reached a point of begging me not to ask, "How are you?" of anyone I knew whilst out and about or shopping. And that's because they often told me, in great lengthy detail, whilst the kids hung about becoming more and more bored and fed up. "Just say hello and walk on," they pleaded. I had to laugh, but I did understand their point of view. There are so many people out there just desperate for someone to offload onto, which doesn't make them bad. And I suppose there is a difference between the brazenly self-absorbed and the lonely or unheard. People whose only conversation is centered around their aches and pains. To anyone who will listen, especially captive audiences. I'm not dissing those with ongoing health conditions. I've experienced long-term pain myself in the past. Just those who think that the world has the time, energy, desire and will to hear all about their sore, this, that or the other again and again. Obviously, some of these EVs aren't the worst people in the world, and we'll probably tolerate them when we have to with some degree of good grace, unless we can't escape them because we are expected to have some kind of duty toward them. However, the worst kind of energy vampire is destructive, calculating, manipulative, dishonest, delusional, and devoid of conscience or sense of personal responsibility. And they usually have all of the time in the world to push their agenda, becoming an agonizing thorn in our side. It feeds them and they thrive upon it. They're usually also clever enough to cover their own tracks, deliberately presenting themselves as honest, friendly individuals or as victims, dependent upon which will serve them better, to selected people. The people they want to hide the truth from. If you become a victim of this type of energy vampire and you don't immediately spot the red flags or act upon them, they have the capacity to make your life a living hell. The best way to handle this EV? Cut them out as quickly as possible, as soon as you even begin to suspect what they are about. Or, if you don't manage to do that, stand up to them, because they are usually bullies. If they believe that they have gotten into your head, they will ramp it up even further. If you're unable to do this, and obviously you do not want to put yourself in physical danger, then refuse to play ball with them. They need your response. They need your fear, your anger, your frustration, your compliance. Ignoring them, brushing them off, behaving as if they are having no effect whatsoever upon you, drives them crazy. They'll push even harder for a while, but then they'll start to lose momentum. But this does take a lot of courage, strong resolve, and patience. These energy vampires can be family members, I'm afraid, neighbours, colleagues, or even strangers who latch onto us. And because they operate in the shadows, others will not always understand the severity of the situation, which can cause us to feel very alone. They bring out the worst in us, which causes us to feel bad about ourselves and our own mindset. They steal from us, sometimes financially, but always spiritually, mentally, and emotionally. They are like dead creatures inside, living, breathing zombies. I pray that you won't ever become involved with this king of all energy vampires. But if you do, fight tooth and nail to keep your head above water and to retain your sanity. Call upon the assistance of the police or any other relevant authority. Lean on those who recognise what is going on and are supportive of you. Accept all productive help and meditate or pray. The good news is either we eventually reach a point of no return and finally face them and stand up against them, or they push their own luck just that bit too far and trip themselves up. Unfortunately, that can take time. Another piece of good news is, having once been on the receiving end of such insidious, soulless bullying, we tend never to repeat the experience because we know too much to allow that to happen twice. So there we are. Please take good care of yourself in the future, and I will see you again soon with another video. Bye.